Hello and welcome back to RageGamingVideos. My name is Hollow and today we're back for another set of underrated weapons. Last time I made a video talking about a few underrated weapons I think are really good that, maybe should be used a bit more because statistically, moveset wise, the power of them is very good and I'm not sure why they're not being used more. Elden Ring has so many great weapons and, not making use of its incredible variety is a bit of a waste. A lot of people in the comments were letting me know, hey, what about this weapon or that weapon? So we figured we should come back and do another set. So let's jump into it. Our first weapon then has to be the Fallingstar beast. And it's jaw that you are using as a weapon, which is quite gnarly, these pincers. This thing is a colossal weapon with a strength and dex rating of C and then a little bit of int. This weapon has to be in the underrated weapons video because it was brought up quite a lot in the comments of the top 5 int weapons. As a weapon that has a bare minimum of D int scaling and a 20 int requirement, you can get those minimum numbers and then just run quality with strength and dex. This leads to a colossal weapon with 918 AR unbuffed, and of course, just like any weapon that has the mixed damage, like this one having magic, we can buff magic damage using our wondrous physic before PvP, before PvE, before a boss fight. That's going to increase our magic damage, bringing our AR up to 965, which is very good. For a moveset, it is literally like a Warhammer. It's a Warhammer moveset, so you've got the triple slam. Your jumping heavies are of course going to be really good. Crouch R1s comes out pretty quick with the slam, like so. And then we have the Ash of War, which is the gravity bolt. This is really good. You have a target strike, like a lightning strike, just like the Faith incantation that is the lightning strike, which we see in PvP from Faith users all the time, thanks to how quick it comes out and how specifically accurate it is, and the ridiculous range of it. We take this thing to PvP and you can see that Ash of War does really good damage, just like the lightning strike, and it comes out quick, so you can catch people out in the middle of trading, or because of its ridiculous range, you can catch people very far away from you. So if they run off to do an incantation, buff up, do anything, maybe you're invading, they try heal, you can interrupt what they're doing from downtown very quickly. As a weapon though, it is a colossal weapon type, so it's got very heavy hits, meaning it's got high poise, and that's that moveset like a Warhammer, right? So in PvP, this is very much all about trading and winning because you are the big heavy hitter. A nice mix up between your close range trading and long range hits, and then the Ash of War spam wherever possible. It's like constant pressure, this weapon. In PvE, it does a really impressive 1k a pop when you're buffed up with that wondrous physic. So you can spam it out for serious damage because it stacks up and stacks up and stacks up, and you can cast it extra quick the second, the third, and fourth time. And it's a range stagger, which is, to say the least, very useful. I mean, in my boss fights where I'm just spamming this Ash of War, I'm getting great damage, then I'm getting a stagger, then I'm getting a critical, and then I repeat. Of course, because it's a heavy weapon, you are going to be able to stagger enemies with the jumping heavies, and you're looking to trade and break poise with enemies and bosses. It's your general heavy weapon gameplay. So yes, definitely underrated, and a very good intelligence weapon at that. To get yourself your own Fallingstar beast jaw, then you're going to want to come to here, Mount Gilmer. And the boss fight itself is right here in this crater because it created the crater when it landed. The nearest grace is the 9th Mount Gilmer campsite. I recommend here at the Bridge of Iniquity, the grace here. As you're approaching from the Altus Plateau, you cross the bridge, and as you're running along this road, there will actually be a ladder on your left, just next to these Iron Maidens here, the two that are standing around. Here's the ladder, you climb up here, and as you come up the ladder, on your left is going to be a grace, or we turn right and make our way uphill, crossing the stone bridge, climbing up higher and higher, and eventually making our way to the 9th campsite. From that campsite then, you can either climb the long ladder like a loser, or use this beautiful jump pad to get all the way up, quite a view. And as you can see, here's the crater. This is where the boss fight takes place. After defeating the boss, you'll get yourself its very jaw. Next up then is, of course, the Bloodhound's Fang. One of the more underrated weapons in the game, despite how early you can get it, despite its stats being solid, and it having a very strong Ash of War if you're able to get it off. Bloodhound's Fang is a curved greatsword, but despite being a more heavy, well, greatsword weapon, it is a dex weapon. You can see that it has the strength scaling of C and dex B. With very low attribute requirements of 18 strength and 17 dex, you can get this running really quick. And it even comes with basic built-in bloodlust buildup. Because this is a curved sword moveset, you've got the kind of loping, sweeping attacks. Frankly, the key to this weapon comes from its Ash of War, the Bloodhound's Finesse. It has this backflip attack, which does really nice damage in both PvE and PvP, but if you follow that up with an R2, a heavy attack, you'll dash forward with a Bloodhound sort of step and then do an uppercut. That also costs FP, as you can see, but the damage you're able to put out using this is kind of ludicrous. In fact, this weapon was in contention for one of the best, if not the best weapon to choose as a speedrunner trying to kill all the bosses or get to the end of the game as fast as possible. This heavy attack combo does so much damage and reliably and consistently throughout the early to mid game that they were heavily considering it. With my stats, we have 846 AR on a two-hand dex weapon. That's really good. We can put fire grease on it to increase the damage and give it some fire element. We could also increase the fire damage using a wondrous physic that enhances fire damage. And we could also use Flame Grant Me Strength to increase the AR physical damage and fire damage. That brings us from 840 something to 1137. You combine that with that Ash of War, you can absolutely devastate boss health bars with these combos of attacks, as you can see against the New Game Plus version of the first enemy that attacks you in the game, or as we go towards, say, Margit, the damage is very, very strong. The downside of this is, of course, the two sort of hit aspect of it. You have to do the back step and then the forward step. It's nice because you get a sort of backwards movement to avoid an attack while hitting the enemy, and then you dash back in using a Bloodhound step, sort of Ash of War, evade, and then you attack where you land. It's just you need to have correct spacing, you need to have correct timing, and you need to not get hit during it, right? The payoff is high, but you need at least a little bit of skill to get it off consistently. All the same, very high damage, very good potential, great weapon. As you can see, its general trading is good because of the nice raw AR. When you're comboing people, you have that bleed potential, and that's going to create pressure. And I think the Ash of War builds into combos for trading really well. Even if you're usually only getting the first hit rather than the follow-up R2, you're still getting good damage. You're still generating dangerous trading for yourself against the enemy. And if you ever do get that follow-up R2, it's going to absolutely slaughter someone. To get yourself the Bloodhound's Fang, then it's fortunately very early in the game, literally in Limgrave, just southeast of the first step where you begin the game. Here at the Forlorn Hound Everjail, or one of the first jails you're going to find in the game, is your target. It is literally the Bloodhound enemy, and when you go to this jail, you simply go to the entrance, which is the middle, and activate it. Interestingly, using his own weapon against him, we've taken down DARRIWIL, and he's going to drop his weapon. So it's fortunately very straightforward, very easy to get, super early game. On this one, we're going to get straight to the point. This is a meta pick. This is one of the strongest options you have in both PvE and PvP right now. What's surprising about that fact then is that not that many people are running it. It is seen in PvP, and yet nowhere near as commonly as you would expect from something that ludicrously strong, right? These are the Cross-Naginata. They are essentially a mix of spear and katana, having the range of a spear with the sort of the end of a katana as its blade. With that, you of course have a very thrusting or poking moveset like you would expect from a spear. But it does have some unique aspects, like the jumping L1 being this slower double, which is really good for catching people in PvP or in general trading. The power of this combination then comes from the fact that it is a regular weapon that can be put in bleed affinity, meaning we can put some arcane in, maybe 50 like I have, and we have 110 bleed build up here, alongside a dex scaling of B despite that. So statistically, this is very strong. Like any bleed build then, you would run the White Mask to increase your attack power when you've got a bleed proc, and the same with the Talisman of Lord of Blood's Exaltation. Combine that with any weapon that can run the Ash of War Seppuku, which is going to activate that bleed proc before I even got into fights, and then get my Seppuku effect on both weapons. Well, I don't have bleed up of 110 on these, I have significantly more than that, and Seppuku also increases your AR. If you're not convinced by what I'm saying, look at my PvP clips. I am literally one-shotting people or 1L1ing people instantly. If you don't have 60 vigor and you get hit by 2 attacks of these, you're dead immediately. And the blood proc is going to be instant. The same thing for PvE. You are able to absolutely clean out health pools of enemies susceptible to bleed with weapons that can do seppuku and bleed arcane scaling. That's known, right? We know that. It's been talked about. Arcane has made this crazy. It's just fascinating that these weapons, with their range, that they're so good in PvP specifically as well, aren't ran nearly as much as they should be, really. Because the regular weapons, though, we could make these keen instead of arcane-based bleed, so we could go down the dex route. If you're running the build that I am right now, you could swap to keen for a fight when you do face the occasional boss who is immune to bleed. So yeah, PvP-wise, you've got the ranges of spears, you've got the bleed effect of any best bleed option in the game, you've got very dangerous combos because they are quick and they have that range, and the damage when you get the bleed procs is absolutely stupid. This is a meta pick that is not picked as if it is a meta pick nearly as commonly. To get yourself the Cross-Naginata, then you're going to want to come to the Gale Tunnel, which is actually the same tunnel, if you're aware, as where you come to get Moonveil. It is just between Limgrave and Caelid, very close to the Rotview balcony if you've got that grace, probably one of the closest graces to it, or quite near the Fort Gale North one as well. Either way, you enter this mine and make your way through, and we're going to follow this path to get to the drop. Yeah, it really is this straightforward. You do have a big boy here, but you don't have to fight him. It is on this body right here. We pick it up, we loot it, we get the hell out of there, and you've got yourself your Naginata. Now, you can only get one per playthrough, so you will have to go into New Game Plus to get yourself another, or have a friend drop you one, which is very easy to do online, and you can do the same for him maybe. But yeah, that's how you get it. Next up then, we have Morgott's Cursed Sword, this purpley green thing that you've been slapped by with Margit, or the real deal with Morgott himself. Not that they're different people. This itself is actually an arcane weapon with bloodlust buildup. You would think people would just slam this into some of the meta weapons, wouldn't you? And yet it is rarely seen or rarely used. As a curved greatsword, you have that moveset that we talked about with Bloodhound's Fang, the double swing, but it's a little bit slower actually. Every attack comes out just a little bit slower. In PvP, that can actually be a good thing for roll catching, but maybe is why people are sleeping on it. Statistically, we have a very respectable B scaling in Dex with the D arcane scaling you need. So with my arcane scaling, we have just under 100 bloodlust buildup, which is very reliable and will proc often. The Ash of War itself, the cursed blood slice though, that's the real deal. Using FP, we are going to do an attack which strikes, and then the air is kind of like cut and explodes as well in that blood. And if you press it a second time, you can do another hit, totaling 4 strikes through the air, which looks really cool, feels very good, and is pretty damn strong in both PvP and PvE. For its AR, we have 666, combining nearly 700 AR with nearly 100 bloodlust buildup. This is a very solid single weapon. And when you think about the fact that you could combine this with another curved greatsword, like even maybe Bloodhound, you'll have a power stance moveset and double damage, as well as more bleed potential. In PvP though, that Ash of War is so good for trading. The various explosion and strike timings mean that it's quite hard to predict and pretty hard to roll. If you try to trade with it, it's a very bad idea. The charge has this forward delay that seems to freak people out and is a nice gap closer, so it's very threatening in that way. And then the range of the explosion is surprisingly far, which I've had catch people as well. And don't forget, because this is a curved greatsword, it has nice general range. For PvE, we have that bleed buildup, which is always going to be strong, but the Ash of War combo does seriously solid damage. You can spam that out for a big burst, and it even staggers bosses for those critical hits, which is obviously huge. If we were to combine this weapon, like I say, in power stance, it's going to be even better. After the charge of the Ash of War gets going, there are periods of hyper armor to protect you, to help you get those swings out. Overall though, I think it's a cool design. Morgott/Margit is a really cool character, so I really enjoy using this sword cane of his. To get your own Morgott's Cursed Sword then, you're going to of course need the Remembrance or Boss Soul from Morgott. Morgott is part of the main story of the game. You cannot finish the game or complete the story without defeating him, and that is taking place towards the Erd Tree at the end of Lindell. After you defeat him, just like any boss or Remembrance Soul, you'll need to bring it to the fingers and have it turned into the weapon of your choice. For our last underrated weapon then, we are talking about the Zamor curved swords, since yes, I'm holding 2 of them. Design wise, curved swords wise, these look really cool. It's like they slapped an extra blade on top of it for some reason. And you can see that it's got these icicles coming out of it because yes, this is a frost weapon. One of the rare weapons to actually cause frost buildup on basic attacks, and it gives you 65 per, which is great raw base. With a C in strength and B in dex scaling, that's good scaling. And it comes with the Zamor Ice Storm Ash of War, where you slam it down and then you have this storm of ice that persists for a few seconds. That does damage on impact, but it also does many ticks of damage, and that builds up frost status ridiculously quickly. Today I'm combining that with Fire's Deadly Sin, because this means I'm taking fire damage over time, but so are any enemies near me, like in PvE or PvP, and that cleanses the frost debuff. The frost debuff makes them take more damage, and they also have stamina regen reduced, but we want that frost proc for damage. It's very satisfying to get a frost proc every single time you use this L2, which we can do using this combination. As a weapon though, it's great. It's a heavy curved sword moveset, and when you've got it in power stance, you're doing double the damage, which is very threatening, very dangerous to deal with in trading in PvP or just in general for your damage in PvE. Without any buffs, we're looking at 650 AR per weapon. That Ash of War is incredible though. If someone trades with it, it does a lot of damage. The frost buildup is basically guaranteed, and it can actually stagger people who try to block it like this guy, and that leads to a burst of damage. Of course, you're heavy hitting with your power stance curved greatswords, and this is good for poised trading. Obviously, I like curved greatswords, and I do think they're underrated, so that's why we talked about a few today. In PvE, the curved greatswords in power stance like this, they're going to have good combos, big damage, and also good poise or stagger damage. The Ash of War does crazy damage. You combine that with the Fire's Deadly Sin, like I said, to cleanse the frost debuff, so you can get the proc of that damage every single time you use the Ash of War. And again, it's another Ash of War that can stagger bosses, which gives you a free critical when you get that off. Obviously great. Yeah, I really like the design of this weapon. I like the curved greatsword moveset, obviously, and people do not seem to respect this Ash of War. To get yourself a Zamor curved sword, then you're going to want to come here to the mountaintops of the giants, specifically to the giant conquering hero's grave. Thankfully, it's straightforward. You come here, you defeat the final boss, and you're going to get the sword. But to get here, it might be a little bit awkward. You have to make your way all the way through the whole area of the mountaintops of the giants, coming around the frozen lake, crossing the chain bridge, and then actually coming west and making a small jump to this sort of peak or plateau, and then you're here at the giant conquering hero's grave. But there you have it. Those are my underrated weapons for today. What did you think? I admit there was a bit more curved greatswords than I realized, but yeah, I do quite enjoy them, and I do think they're quite strong. Let me know your thoughts on these weapons though, and actually, if you have any other suggestions like last time for other good underrated weapons, maybe we can come back for another. Until next time then, I've been Hollow, and you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.